What if I told you that everything you know about occultism is a carefully crafted lie designed to keep you powerless? And that thought has crossed your mind before, hasn't it? You've sensed there's something they're not telling you. Something hidden just beneath the surface of accepted reality. In the next 50 minutes, you'll discover the forbidden truth about occultism that will completely transform your understanding of reality, consciousness, and your own untapped potential. Welcome, seeker of hidden truths. You found yourself here because something deep inside you knows there's more to this world than what meets the eye. Something beyond the mundane explanations they've fed you since childhood. Today we're diving into the most misunderstood and deliberately obscured subject in human history, a topic so powerful that entire civilizations have risen and fallen based on who controlled this knowledge. Are you ready to learn what they've been hiding from you for centuries? Then stay with me until the very end, because what you're about to discover will shake the foundations of everything you thought you knew about power, consciousness, and the true nature of reality itself. You've always felt it, haven't you? That nagging sensation that there are forces at work behind the scenes, energies and knowledge that somehow remain just out of reach. You've probably noticed how certain topics make people uncomfortable, how their eyes glaze over or they quickly change the subject when you bring up anything that challenges the mainstream narrative. You've seen how the media immediately ridicules anyone who dares to speak about these subjects, painting them as crazy conspiracy theorists or dangerous cultists. Well, today that programming ends forever. But first, let me ask you something. When was the last time you had a dream that felt more real than waking life? When did you last experience a coincidence so perfect, so precisely timed, that it sent chills down your spine? Remember that moment when you walked into a room and instantly knew something significant had happened there? Or when you met someone for the first time, but felt like you'd known them forever? These aren't random experiences. They're glimpses of a reality that exists parallel to the one you've been taught to accept. The word occultism itself has been weaponized against you through centuries of systematic programming. They want you to think it means something dark, evil, or dangerous. But here's the shocking truth that changes everything. Occult simply means hidden. It comes from the Latin word occultus, which means concealed or secret. So when we talk about occult knowledge, we're talking about hidden knowledge, wisdom that has been deliberately concealed from the general population. And the question you should be asking yourself right now is this: why would powerful knowledge be systematically hidden from you? Let me tell you a story that will explain everything and reveal the true scope of this deception. In ancient Egypt, there existed two completely different educational systems operating simultaneously. The exoteric teachings were given to the masses. Simple stories, basic moral guidelines, surface-level understanding designed to keep people compliant and manageable. But the esoteric teachings, those were reserved exclusively for the initiates, the priests, the pharaohs, and the ruling elite. These inner teachings contained a real knowledge about the nature of reality, consciousness, human potential, and the hidden forces that shape our world. This wasn't just some minor detail of ancient history. This dual system has existed throughout every single civilization in human history. The Greeks had their mystery schools at Eleusis, where initiates experienced direct communion with divine consciousness. The Romans maintained secret societies that preserved knowledge spanning continents and centuries. The medieval period had its alchemists and Hermetic orders working in hidden laboratories to unlock the secrets of transmutation, not just of metals, but of consciousness itself. And here's what will absolutely blow your mind. This knowledge never disappeared. It didn't fade away with the fall of ancient civilizations. It simply went underground, passed down through secret lineages, hidden societies, and coded texts that most people walk right past every single day without ever understanding their true significance. But why hide knowledge in the first place? Think about this carefully, because the implications are staggering. If you knew how to harness the full power of your consciousness, if you understood the real laws that govern reality, if you could tap into abilities that most people consider impossible or supernatural, would you still be controllable by external authorities? Would you still accept limitations that others try to impose on you? Would you still live in fear of forces supposedly beyond your control? Would you still believe that you need someone else's permission to access your own divine nature? The answer is obvious, and it terrifies those who benefit from keeping humanity unconscious and dependent. An awakened population is an uncontrollable population. A conscious humanity is a free humanity. And that's exactly why this knowledge has been systematically suppressed, ridiculed, criminalized, and driven underground for centuries. Now, let's get one thing crystal clear right from the start, because I want to shatter the lies you've been fed about what occultism actually represents. True occultism has absolutely nothing to do with the Hollywood nonsense they've programmed you to fear. No demons lurking in shadows, no evil spirits waiting to possess you, no selling your soul to dark forces for temporal power. That's all propaganda designed to keep you terrified of your own unlimited potential. Real occult knowledge is about understanding the hidden laws of nature, consciousness, and reality itself. The same laws that operate whether you're aware of them or not. Remember when you were a child, before the world trained that natural wisdom out of you. You could sense things that adults couldn't or claimed they couldn't. You knew when someone was lying before they even spoke, reading the energy behind their words. You could feel the emotional atmosphere of a room the moment you walked in, picking up on currents of feeling that had nothing to do with what people were saying. You had dreams that seemed more vivid and meaningful than your waking experiences. And sometimes, those dreams gave you information you couldn't have known any other way. You saw patterns and connections that adults dismissed as imagination or coincidence. What happened to those abilities? Did they just mysteriously disappear as you grew older, or were they systematically trained out of you by a society that fears what it doesn't understand and can't control? Every time you expressed these natural capacities, you were told you were being silly, making things up, or letting your imagination run wild. Slowly, but surely, you learned to suppress these gifts until eventually you forgot you ever had them. Here's where it gets really wild, and this is going to challenge everything you think you know about the relationship between science and spirituality. Modern quantum physics is finally catching up to what occultists have known and practiced for thousands of years. The observer effect in quantum mechanics proves beyond any doubt that consciousness directly influences physical reality at the most fundamental level. The concept of quantum entanglement demonstrates that everything in the universe is connected instantaneously across any distance. Scientists are now seriously discussing the holographic nature of reality, the simulation hypothesis, and the primary role of consciousness in creating our experienced world. But here's what's truly amazing. Ancient occultists didn't need billion-dollar particle accelerators or complex mathematical equations to understand and work with these principles. They developed practices, rituals, meditation techniques, and consciousness technologies that allowed them to directly experience and consciously manipulate these fundamental forces of reality. They understood, through direct experience, what our most advanced physicists are just beginning to glimpse through theoretical models and experimental data. The gap between ancient wisdom and modern science isn't as wide as you might think. In fact, they're converging on identical conclusions about the nature of reality. The difference is that occultists developed practical methods for working with these principles, while modern science is still struggling to even understand what they're measuring. Let's talk about what authentic occultism actually encompasses, because it's far more comprehensive and sophisticated than the distorted versions you've been shown. Astrology. Not the oversimplified newspaper horoscopes designed to make the whole system look ridiculous, but the incredibly sophisticated science that maps the influence of celestial bodies on human consciousness, earthly events, and the cycles of manifestation. For thousands of years, the greatest minds in history, including Kepler, Newton, and countless other luminaries, used astrological principles to understand timing, personality patterns, historical cycles. Alchemy, commonly misunderstood as primitive chemistry practiced by deluded individuals trying to turn lead into gold, but actually representing one of the most sophisticated psychological and spiritual sciences ever developed. The alchemists weren't primarily concerned with metallic transmutation. They were mapping the stages of consciousness, transformation itself. The famous alchemical wedding, the philosopher's stone, the elixir of life, the various stages of the great work. These are all precise metaphors for stages of spiritual development and consciousness expansion that you can experience. Numerology and sacred geometry reveal the mathematical patterns and harmonic relationships underlying all of creation. The ancient builders of the pyramids, Gothic cathedrals, and sacred temples around the world knew these principles intimately and encoded them into their constructions. These weren't merely aesthetic choices or cultural traditions. They were functional technologies designed to create specific effects on human consciousness, to amplify certain energies, and to serve as bridges between different levels of reality. The tarot, I Ching, runes, and other divination systems. These aren't fortune-telling parlor tricks or superstitious nonsense. They're sophisticated psychological and spiritual tools that help you access your own inner wisdom and understand the archetypal forces operating in your life at any given moment. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant psychologists of the modern era, studied these systems extensively throughout his career because he recognized their profound insight into the structure and dynamics of the human psyche. Meditation, visualization, breathwork, and consciousness expansion techniques. Every authentic spiritual tradition in human history has developed some version of these practices because they work. They give you direct access to levels of awareness that most people never even know exist, states of consciousness that reveal the interconnected nature of all existence and your own unlimited potential within that cosmic web. And here's something that might shock you. You don't need to believe in anything supernatural or religious for these techniques to be effective. They're based on the natural capabilities of human consciousness that you already possess, but have never been taught to develop or access consciously. Now, here's what they absolutely don't want you to know. And this revelation alone could change your entire perspective on how the world really works. Every major corporation, government institution, intelligence agency, and power structure uses these principles behind closed doors while publicly dismissing them as nonsense or dangerous delusion. Wall Street traders use astrological timing for major market moves and financial predictions. Silicon Valley executives hire numerologists, feng shui consultants, and intuitive advisors. Political campaigns are planned around astrological cycles and energetic considerations. The most powerful and successful people in the world understand and actively use this knowledge while keeping the general population ignorant of its existence and effectiveness. Think about the symbolism that surrounds you every single day, hidden in plain sight once you know how to recognize it. Corporate logos loaded with ancient symbols and archetypal imagery. Government seals incorporating mystical elements that most people never consciously notice. Architectural designs based on sacred geometric principles. Entertainment and media imagery saturated with occult symbolism and consciousness influencing techniques. The eye of providence on the dollar bill. The sacred geometric patterns built into the layout of major cities like Washington, D.C. The astronomical alignments of important government buildings and monuments. This isn't coincidence, and it's not the result of some vast conscious conspiracy. It's the practical application of occult principles by those who understand their power, sometimes consciously, sometimes through inherited traditions. They may not fully understand themselves, but always with real effects on the collective consciousness of humanity. But here's the beautiful truth that will change everything for you. And this is why I'm sharing this knowledge openly instead of keeping it hidden. This wisdom isn't reserved for some special elite or secret society. It's not the exclusive property of those born into certain families or initiated into particular organizations. It's birthright as a conscious being. Every human has the inherent capacity to develop these abilities and understand these principles. The only thing standing between you and this knowledge is your own willingness to question what you've been told and explore what's actually possible. Let me share something that might sound impossible, but is absolutely real and has been documented extensively by researchers who risked their careers to investigate these phenomena. Throughout history, there have been individuals who developed abilities that seem supernatural to ordinary perception, but are actually natural extensions of consciousness that become accessible when you understand how reality actually works. Remote viewing, the ability to perceive distant locations, objects, and events through consciousness alone, without any physical means of obtaining the information. The CIA's Stargate project, declassified documents prove, used remote viewers for decades to gather intelligence that was often more accurate than traditional espionage methods. This isn't science fiction. It's documented scientific fact that consciousness can transcend the apparent limitations of space and time. Telect mind-to-mind communication that quantum entanglement theory suggests is not only possible, but inevitable once you understand that all consciousness is fundamentally interconnected. The apparent separation between individual minds is an illusion created by our focus on physical bodies and local brain activity. Precognition, glimpses of future events that appear in dreams, visions, meditation states, and spontaneous, intuitive flashes. This ability suggests that time itself isn't the linear progression we normally experience, but something far more fluid and malleable at deeper levels of reality. Psychokinesis, the ability to influence physical objects and systems through focused consciousness and intention. Laboratory studies have documented statistically significant effects that can't be explained by conventional physics, but make perfect sense when you understand consciousness as a fundamental creative force in the universe. These aren't magic tricks or fantasy fulfillment. They're natural capabilities that become accessible when you understand how consciousness actually functions and learn to work with rather than against the deeper laws of reality. And here's the most amazing part. You've probably experienced hints or glimpses of these abilities yourself, but dismissed them as coincidence, imagination, or wishful thinking. The next part is where things get absolutely mind-bending, because we need to talk about the fundamental nature of reality itself and why everything you think you know about the physical world is based on outdated scientific models that have been completely superseded. Matter isn't solid. It's mostly empty space held together by electromagnetic forces and probability waves. At the quantum level, particles don't exist in definite locations until they're observed by consciousness. Time isn't linear and absolute. It's relative, flexible, and intimately connected to the observer's frame of reference. Space isn't fixed and unchanging. It can be curved, folded, stretched, and transcended through various means. But here's the real kicker that changes everything. Your consciousness isn't produced by your brain like some kind of biological computer. Consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe itself, and your brain functions more like a radio receiver that tunes into and focuses particular frequencies of this universal awareness. This means your consciousness isn't limited by your physical body. It can travel, connect with other consciousness across any distance, and access information from sources that have nothing to do with your 5 physical senses. Ancient occultists understood this intuitively and developed sophisticated techniques to consciously navigate these expanded states of awareness. Astral projection, the ability to move your consciousness outside your physical body and explore other dimensions of reality that interpenetrate our normal world. Lucid dreaming, taking conscious control of the dream state to access information, heal trauma, develop skills, and explore possibilities that would be impossible in ordinary waking consciousness. Deep meditation, states that reveal the illusory nature of individual separation and the fundamental unity of all existence. But this is just the beginning of what becomes possible when you understand how consciousness really works and learn to use it as the creative tool it actually is. Reality itself is far more responsive to consciousness than mainstream science will admit, though the evidence is overwhelming for anyone willing to look at it objectively. The placebo effect proves that belief and expectation can literally heal disease, change brain chemistry, alter DNA expression, and transform physiology in ways that should be impossible according to materialistic models of reality. Prayer and intention. Studies conducted by rigorous researchers show that focused mental energy can influence events, heal illness, and affect biological systems at a distance. Manifestation techniques demonstrate that persistent, emotionally charged, clearly focused thought can attract corresponding experiences, opportunities, and circumstances into your life through mechanisms that conventional science can't explain but can't deny. What I'm about to share isn't for everyone, And if you're still with me at this point, it means you're genuinely ready to hear it. The ultimate secret of all occult traditions, the hidden truth that connects every mystical system ever developed, is that you are not separate from the creative force of the universe. You are not a tiny, insignificant accident in a vast, meaningless cosmos. You are a localized expression of infinite consciousness, temporarily focused through a human nervous system for the purpose of experience, growth, and creative expression. This means you have access to the same fundamental creative power that shapes galaxies, evolves species, and orchestrates the dance of atoms and planets. You are that power, individualized and embodied, with the capacity to consciously participate in the ongoing creation of reality itself. The reason this knowledge has been hidden and suppressed throughout history is because it makes traditional power structures completely irrelevant. When you understand your true nature as infinite consciousness, temporarily wearing a human form, you stop looking for external authorities to tell you what to think, what to believe, what's possible, and what's not. You realize that the power they claim to have over you is largely illusory, based entirely on your own unconscious agreement to remain small, limited, and dependent on their systems of control. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or trying to dominate others. Quite the opposite. As you awaken to your true nature, you naturally become more compassionate, more ethical, more service-oriented, because you directly experience the interconnection of all life. It becomes impossible to harm others without feeling it in yourself. The idea that spiritual development or psychic abilities lead to selfish or evil behavior is completely backwards. It's unconsciousness and disconnection that create cruelty and exploitation, not expanded awareness. Now, let me give you some practical, immediately applicable ways to begin accessing this knowledge directly in your own experience. Don't just take my word for any of this. Test it yourself and see what happens. First, start paying attention to your dreams with new respect and systematic attention. Keep a dream journal by your bedside and write down everything you remember immediately upon waking, before your rational mind has a chance to edit or dismiss the information. Dreams are your consciousness processing information from levels of reality that your normal waking awareness filters out. Many of history's greatest scientific discoveries, artistic creations, and spiritual insights came through dreams and visionary states. Second, consciously develop your intuitive abilities through daily practice and attention. Before checking your phone in the morning, take a few minutes to tune into your body and sense what kind of energy the day holds. Before meeting someone new, pause and feel into their energy field to see what impressions come up. Before making important decisions, sit quietly and listen to what your deeper wisdom is telling you, beyond the chatter of your analytical mind. Third, begin working consciously with synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that seem too perfectly timed and precisely relevant to be random chance. Start looking for patterns in your experience, repeating numbers, unusual animal encounters, books and conversations that seem to be directly responding to your inner questions and concerns. The more conscious attention you pay to synchronicity, the more frequently and dramatically it will appear in your life. Fourth, learn to work intelligently with natural cycles and cosmic energies instead of fighting against them. Pay careful attention to the moon phases, and notice how they affect your energy levels, emotional states, and creative capacity. Observe the seasonal changes and align your activities with natural rhythms rather than arbitrary social schedules. Spend regular time in natural settings and practice feeling the life force that animates all living things. Fifth, experiment with various forms of meditation, breathwork, and consciousness expansion techniques. Find approaches that resonate with your temperament and lifestyle. Then practice them consistently rather than jumping from technique to technique. The key is regularity and patience. These abilities develop gradually through sustained practice, not through dramatic one-time experiences. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing, and this is the most important point I can share with you. These practices aren't just about developing unusual abilities or having interesting experiences. They're about remembering who you really are beneath all the layers of conditioning, limitation, and false identity that society has programmed into you since birth. Every technique in every authentic occult tradition is ultimately designed to help you recognize and embody your true nature as infinite consciousness, having a temporary human experience. This recognition has been described throughout history using different words and concepts: enlightenment, self-realization, gnosis, awakening, liberation, union with the divine. But they're all pointing toward the same fundamental shift in identity and understanding. Instead of seeing yourself as a separate, vulnerable, limited individual struggling to survive in a hostile or indifferent universe, you begin to recognize yourself as the eternal awareness in which all experience appears. You realize that the same consciousness looking out through your eyes is looking out through every pair of eyes, experiencing itself through every form of life, playing every role in the cosmic drama. This is why the deepest occult knowledge has always been transmitted through direct experience, rather than intellectual study alone. You can read every book ever written about these subjects, memorize every theory and technique, study with the most accomplished teachers. But until you have your own direct, undeniable experiences of expanded consciousness and your true nature, it all remains just interesting. So how do you begin having these transformative experiences yourself? The most important approach is to maintain an attitude of scientific curiosity rather than blind belief or skeptical dismissal. Test everything through your own experience. Experiment with the techniques and approaches that appeal to you. Pay careful attention to the results without trying to force particular outcomes. Keep what works in your direct experience and discard what doesn't produce genuine results. Remember that consciousness development is like developing any other skill. It requires consistent practice, patience with the process, and acceptance of gradual progress rather than expecting instant mastery. You wouldn't expect to become a virtuoso musician or Olympic athlete overnight. And the same principles apply to developing your psychic, spiritual, and consciousness abilities. But here's what makes this journey so worthwhile. The rewards of this work go far beyond anything the external world can offer you. As you develop these capacities, you'll discover that the boundaries you've always taken for granted, between self and other, between inner and outer reality, between possible and impossible, between sacred and mundane, begin to dissolve and reveal themselves. You'll start to understand experientially why the great occultists throughout history spoke of reality as a unified field of consciousness expressing itself as the infinite diversity of forms, experiences, and perspectives that make up the manifest world. You'll begin to see the same creative intelligence operating in the growth of plants, the movement of planets, the structure of galaxies, and the patterns of your own thoughts and experiences. One of the most profound realizations that emerges from this work is understanding the true meaning of magic. Not supernatural powers that violate natural law, but the conscious application of natural laws and principles that most people don't understand. When you learn to align your consciousness with the fundamental patterns and forces that shape reality, what appears miraculous to others becomes simply the natural result of working intelligently with the way things actually are. The ancient Hermetic principle as above, so below points directly to this understanding. The same patterns that govern the movement of celestial bodies also operate in human consciousness, personal relationships, and daily life events. The same forces that create and destroy galaxies are active in your individual experience, and when you learn to recognize and consciously work with these patterns, you gain access to a level of power and understanding that transforms every aspect of your existence. Now, let's address something that might be concerning you at this point. Is this knowledge dangerous? Can these practices cause psychological or spiritual harm? The answer is nuanced but critically important to understand clearly. Like any powerful tool or body of knowledge, occult principles can potentially be misused by individuals with selfish motives or psychological imbalances. But the greatest danger isn't in the knowledge itself. It's in remaining ignorant of these forces that leaves you vulnerable to manipulation by those who understand and use them without your awareness or consent. Think about it this way. You're already swimming in an ocean of psychic energies, electromagnetic fields, consciousness influences, and subtle forces, whether you're aware of them or not. These energies are constantly affecting your thoughts, emotions, decisions, and life circumstances. The question isn't whether to enter this realm of subtle influences. You're already completely immersed in it. The real question is whether to remain unconscious of these forces or to develop the awareness, understanding, and skills necessary to navigate them consciously and protect yourself from negative influences. The dark reputation that surrounds occultism comes partly from deliberate disinformation, campaigns designed to keep people afraid of their own power, and partly from individuals throughout history who approached these practices with impure motives, seeking power. But the core principles of every authentic occult tradition always emphasize ethical development, compassion for all life, service to the highest good, and alignment with universal principles rather than personal ego gratification. In fact, as you develop genuine psychic sensitivity and expanded awareness, you naturally become more compassionate, more ethical, and more concerned with the welfare of others, because you directly experience the fundamental interconnection of all life. It becomes impossible to harm others without feeling the effects in yourself. The notion that psychic development leads to evil or selfish behavior is completely backwards. It's unconsciousness, disconnection, and ignorance of these principles that create the capacity for cruelty and exploitation. What you need to understand is that we're currently living through a time of unprecedented change and opportunity. Old systems of control are collapsing. Human consciousness is expanding globally at an accelerating rate, and knowledge that was once carefully. This isn't happening by accident or coincidence. The massive challenges facing humanity, climate disruption, economic inequality, political polarization, technological upheaval, social fragmentation, these aren't separate problems requiring separate solutions. They're all symptoms of a deeper consciousness crisis, a fundamental disconnection from our true nature, our relationship with each other, and our place in the larger web of life on this planet. The knowledge we've been exploring today offers practical tools for healing this disconnect and creating a world that works for everyone rather than just a privileged few. But this transformation can't happen through external political or social changes alone. It requires a shift in consciousness that begins with individuals like you who are willing to question the limitations they've been taught. This brings us to perhaps the most important aspect of authentic occult knowledge: its application in service of healing, evolution, and the upliftment of all life, rather than personal gain, ego gratification, or control over others. The greatest occultists, mystics, and consciousness explorers throughout history have invariably been healers, teachers, and servants of humanity's highest potential. They understood that true spiritual power comes not from dominating others, but from empowering them to discover and express their own divine nature. As you begin working with these principles in your own life, you'll discover that the most profound and lasting changes happen not through dramatic supernatural events or flashy psychic phenomena, but through subtle shifts in perception, understanding. You'll find yourself making wiser decisions, attracting more positive experiences, developing capabilities you never knew you possessed, and naturally becoming a more effective force for positive change in the world. But perhaps most importantly, you'll start to remember and embody who you really are beneath all the roles, identities, conditioning, and limitations that you've accepted as defining your reality. You'll recognize the eternal, unchanging awareness that is your true nature, the same consciousness that looks out through every pair of eyes, dreams every dream, and experiences itself through every form of life in the universe. This is the ultimate secret that all occult traditions point toward in their various ways, not some exotic supernatural ability or esoteric information, but the direct recognition of your own divine nature. And once this recognition begins to dawn in your consciousness, everything else becomes secondary. The psychic abilities, the magical techniques, the esoteric knowledge, the secret teachings, they're all just natural expressions and tools of consciousness that has remembered its true identity and unlimited creative potential. So as we come to the end of this incredible journey together, let me leave you with this essential understanding. The knowledge I've shared today isn't meant to be believed as another set of ideas or concepts to add to your mental collection. It's meant to be tested, experimented with, and verified through your own direct experience. Don't take my word for anything. Don't accept these ideas because they sound appealing, or reject them because they challenge your current worldview. Instead, approach them as working hypotheses to be investigated through careful experimentation in your own life. Pay attention to what happens when you begin treating reality as consciousness rather than dead matter, when you approach synchronicity as meaningful, when you explore the edges of what you've been taught is possible for human beings. The greatest teachers in every wisdom tradition have pointed toward the same fundamental truth, using different words and methods, that you already contain everything you're seeking. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Your Buddha nature is your original face. The philosopher's stone is your own consciousness. The Holy Grail is the recognition of your true identity. All the external techniques, practices, and teachings are just different ways of remembering and embodying what you already are in your essential nature. But don't let this profound truth become an excuse for spiritual bypassing or avoiding the practical work of development. Yes, you are already perfect and complete in your deepest essence, but that perfection wants to express itself through your human experience, your relationships, your creative work, and your service in the world. And that expression requires developing the skills, abilities, understanding, and wisdom that allow your true nature to shine through the personality and transform your daily life. Today you discovered that occultism isn't about dark magic, supernatural nonsense, or dangerous spiritual practices. It's about understanding the hidden laws of consciousness and reality that operate whether you're aware of them or not. You learned that this knowledge has been systematically suppressed throughout history because awakened, conscious individuals can't be controlled by external authorities who depend on keeping humanity ignorant and dependent. You explored practical techniques for developing your natural psychic abilities and expanding your awareness beyond the narrow limits of ordinary perception. You discovered the connections between ancient wisdom and modern science, and how they're converging on identical insights about the fundamental nature of reality. Most importantly, you began to glimpse your own true nature as infinite consciousness, temporarily focused through a human nervous system for the purposes of experience, growth, and creative expression. But this is just the beginning of what's possible when you commit to this path of conscious development. In upcoming videos, we'll dive much deeper into specific practices and applications, how to develop and trust your telepathic abilities, how to use sacred geometry and numerology in your daily life. We'll explore the hidden connections between ancient mystery schools and cutting-edge physics, decode the symbolic language used in religious texts and occult literature, and reveal the practical techniques that have been carefully guarded. Subscribe right now so you don't miss these revolutionary revelations that could transform your entire relationship with reality and unlock potentials you never imagined possible. Hit that notification bell to make sure you're alerted the moment each new video goes live, because this information is too important to miss. And make sure to comment below and let me know which of today's insights resonated most powerfully with you. Was it the realization that consciousness is the fundamental creative force in reality? The understanding that you already possess dormant psychic abilities waiting to be developed? The recognition that this knowledge has been deliberately hidden to maintain systems of control? Or perhaps the glimpse of your own true nature as infinite awareness temporarily wearing human form? Your engagement helps this crucial information reach more people who are ready to wake up from the trance of limitation and step into their full potential as conscious beings. Remember, truth reveals itself to those who are prepared to receive it. And the fact that you've stayed with me through this entire exploration proves that you're one of those rare individuals who's ready to transcend ordinary perception and claim your birthright as the journey we've begun today will transform every aspect of your existence if you have the courage to continue. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll go even deeper into these hidden realms of reality and practical methods for mastering the art of conscious living. Until then, pay attention to the synchronicities, trust your intuitive insights, and remember, you are far more powerful than you've been taught to believe.